this is recorded, or this is recording rather, so we can get started. So very, very excited about this whole session here, this new series. So for people who are watching the recorded version, which will be most people, to be honest, most people who watch this will be watching recorded. This is a series I wanted to start for a while, talking about how to teach. So there are some people who are watching this in the Google Meet as well. Essentially, what this series will look like online is every single week there's going to be a new video where we talk about how we teach at the Calgary Language Nerds. So I'm going to share my screen here so you can see a presentation that I've prepared. Okay. Perfect. So, and let me just confirm that this is actually working by clicking here. Okay, right now it looks like really funny, which is fine. And then now, excellent. In fact, let me do this differently, actually. I'm going to share just a window. It's better that way. We're just going to share a window. There we go. That's much better. Perfect. Excellent. That's way better. So every single week, there's going to be a new, a different topic. So as you can see on the screen here, the topic for today is going to be talking about trust and rapport is going to be a topic for today. Okay, so let me do a proper share here. Ooh, there's a typo on the screen. So there's a typo. Let's fix that right now. Perfect, there we go. So agenda. So we're gonna do a little bit about, we're gonna do a quick about me. We're gonna talk about what rapport is and why it matters. We're going to talk about some verbal and nonverbal keys for rapport. We'll have some practical strategies for rapport. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A discussion, which won't be recorded. So right now this is recording, but the Q&A and discussion won't be recorded. Okay. So I think a really important thing to note is today we're just scratching the surface. There's a lot that goes into rapport building and building trust and having a good relationship with students. Like literally that could literally be a whole course. There could be a whole lot that goes into just that one skill. And so today you can view that kind of as an introduction. And as the weeks go by, it's going to be a topic that we definitely revisit. Quite often. We're going to revisit it and we're going to go into it in more depth. And there's going to be, as these videos go live, people are going to ask me different questions. And I'm going to be like, oh man, we should have definitely talked about that in the rapport video. Great. And it's going to be implemented into another week. So we're going to build on everything we do today. So for people who don't know me, so my name's Azren. It's on my t-shirt in this picture. Not sure if you can see that or not, but regardless, Azren. I'm from Calgary, Canada. So it's a city close to the Rocky Mountains. I'll make this full screen again. There we go. So close to the Rocky Mountains in Canada. So I studied, if I graduated from university in 2014, I did a double major in French and Spanish. I'm doing a second degree right now at the university as a part-time student. So I take one class per semester. And I'm doing it's a degree in East Asian language studies with a concentration in Mandarin Chinese. So clearly I really like learning languages. I've been a huge language learning enthusiast since the age of probably like 15, 16, because I went to France on an exchange trip. And ever since then, basically after that trip, I decided I liked French. Then I started to learn Spanish. I realized I liked Spanish. Then I took a linguistics class in my intro year of university, realized I like linguistics. And eventually I was like, maybe I just like learning languages as a whole. And so that's a really, really big interest of mine. A core element that's a really, really big part of my identity is a window cleaning business, funnily enough. So the first real job I had was running a window cleaning franchise, which I did for 5.5 years. It's a core element of it's a really, really big part of my identity, because there's a lot of skills that I learned there at that line of work that I currently use in day-to-day life, but even just in my current line of work, which is running the Calgary Language Nerds. So everything I learned, or a lot of, not everything, but a lot of what I learned about about working with people, about hiring, about financials, about even teaching. Funnily enough, teaching, a huge part of teaching comes from that line of work, because there's such teaching and coaching and training was like one of the biggest parts of my role at that business. Especially at the tail end of it, I was running Central Canada for that company as a general manager. And so I was operating basically Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. So it's about 7 or 8 different cities across those 3 provinces that had about 20, give or take 15 to 20-ish franchisees who each had a couple employees each, call it 1 to 6 employees each. So it's like there's a lot of different people. So it's a very people-oriented role, and there's so much training and coaching that I was doing. So a lot of the teaching stuff that I believe in now comes from that experience, funnily enough. And then I'm a huge traveler. So in this picture, I'm in a rainforest in Taiwan. My friend and I got lost, funnily enough. We got lost trying to find some hot springs, and then we hiked for 6 hours trying to find our way, trying to figure out where to go. And I love traveling, and I love having adventures like that. So what is rapport? So rapport, in very simple terms, is the emotional connection that you have with another person. So think of it kind of like relationship. It's a very similar word as relationship, and it's super duper important. Good rapport leads to trust. So trust among different people. And literally, when you're teaching, like, having good rapport is 50% of the equation. I think a lot of times when people think of teaching, myself included, even before, like when I would think of teaching, or a lot of people, the picture that comes to mind is someone who can clearly explain things and say, okay, this is how blah, blah, blah works. This is how this grammar rule works. This is how this French thing works. This Spanish thing works, and that's often a lot of the different things we think about when it comes to teaching. But literally half the equation is just the relationship you have with the student, or students rather. We'll get into why that is in a moment. And I wrote this point down here, like, it's a balance between warmth and expertise. So I think when you're working with not just teachers, but anyone, you have there's 2 different types of characteristics that people have, right? So you have, on one side, is someone warm? Are they friendly? Are they approachable? Are they likable? Let's call that warmth, right? That's very important. People generally like to work with people that they like. But there's also like a knowledge piece, and there's an expertise piece, and there's an ability of, do you actually know what you're doing? Do you have the skill to teach me? Do I believe that if I follow you and I follow your instruction, that I'm going to get to the language, the level of fluency that I'm trying to get to? And there has to be a balance between the 2. I personally, my general, I suppose my tendencies tends to be to go more towards the likability side. Personally, I have to remind myself that it's not all about likability, and I have to push myself to also demonstrate a lot of my expertise. I just have a default into being liked. It's a default like that I have inside of me. And so I have to kind of be mindful to be like, yeah, sometimes you can just speak directly and just show that, yes, I am the leader here, and this is how, like, we have to kind of go through this exercise in class. We have to do this activity. We have to do X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z in order for you to achieve what you're wanting to get to. Some people are the other way around. They're super good at being like, hey, this is what we have to do, but they're not. Maybe they're more introverted, so they don't come across as warm. They don't come across as friendly. I know plenty of people like that. So it's a balance. It's a balance between the 2. So good rapport is important for a variety of reasons. So the first one I wrote is student retention. Now, understandably, people watching this, and some of you even watching this that are in this Google Meet right now, for student retention, like if you're a classroom teacher in a school board, student retention is not really a factor, meaning kids are coming to school regardless. They have to come to school. So it's not really a huge element per se. I think for people on a school board, student retention, what that would mean in that context is that the kids are actually it's a big part of having them engaged and being able to keep their attention. One part of it is that it's having a good a good student-teacher relationship. And which is important because you're stuck with those kids for the whole year. You're stuck with them. Whether that could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. I think it depends. Depends on how you view it and depends on how good of a rapport you have. And then in our world, like in the Calgary Language Nerds, our students are, while we have children and adults, they're after school types of things. They're after work. They are it's an extracurricular activity. So when you have a good rapport with the teacher, when the teacher has a good rapport with the student and vice versa, it helps with retention and people actually wanting to stick around and pay for more classes, which is very important. You also learn faster from people you like and trust. It creates a positive learning environment. Makes it more fun for both the teacher and students. I've taught classes, and I think a lot of people can relate to it. Think about a job maybe you've had where you didn't like someone at work or you didn't like your boss. Man, it sucks to go to work. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. So imagine for students, it's the same thing, whether it's private, especially because it's one-on-one, and then group classes too. If you don't like your teacher or you don't enjoy your teacher's company, it's not going to be a fun time. And if you don't like your student's company, it's not going to be a fun time for you either. It's not going to be very enjoyable. It's very important. And then, when you have good rapport, when you have good trust, students are more receptive to feedback, and you will have to give, especially when you work with people for longer periods of time, you will have to give feedback on their learning. You'll have to say, man, we're not progressing with that past tense. Like, what's happening? I think we have to do X, Y, Z. And if the better relationship you have, the easier that conversation is and the more receptive they are. So, perfect. So this rapport building is ongoing. Often when people think about building a good relationship, a lot of people think about first impressions, which is important, but first impressions are not everything. You can always fix it. You can always fix something. And in fact, funnily enough, someone once told this to me and it made me chuckle. If you have a bad first impression, but then you fix it, there's a good chance they end up liking you more. So let's say we had a class and I taught a class and you're like, this guy doesn't seem very competent. He definitely doesn't have expertise. He wasn't organized. He didn't hear me out, didn't listen to me. What the heck? That was so like, what the heck just happened there? I did not enjoy that experience. I don't like this teacher, right? I'm not sure about this teacher. Maybe that's how they feel. Maybe they express it, maybe they don't. But then the next class, you're like, hey, I realized last time I was kind of disorganized and I was in a bad mood and I kind of messed up. I'm super sorry about that, but I want to kind of make it better. And then you do make it better, they're going to appreciate that. So funnily enough, like first impression is important, but it's not everything, because as long as you fix it, it actually ends up being a double plus. There's a teacher watching this right now, who, I'll share a quick story. Like I remember one of the classes, we had tech issues. Like there's a tech issue in one of the classes and it kind of made it a bit choppy, right? But it ended up being okay. They took classes after and it was great. They got very positive feedback. It was amazing. So it's not everything at all. So it's important to realize that it's okay. You can completely, not butcher a first impression, but it's not everything is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. So let's go through some general keys. So first of all, there's some nonverbal keys, which we're going to go through, and then later on we'll see some verbal keys. So nonverbal meaning things that have nothing to do with you speaking and have everything to do with body language and things of that nature. So being punctual and organized matters. Excuse me. I think that's reasonably straightforward. So for example, showing up on time. I didn't write it in here, but being respectful of the class time as well. So not going over time and not like actually making sure if it's a 1.5 hour class, you teach for an hour and a half. And then organize, I think, speaks for itself, like making sure that you are not frazzled, making sure your notes are easy to follow, making sure that you're organized. I think we all know what organized means. Following through on what you say, what you will do, it builds trust. So this is a really big thing. Going back to the window cleaning business that I used to run, that was a huge thing that franchise focused on. They're very, very big on that. Like they're like, when you say something, it has to happen. Like 95% of the time, you have a 5-10% leeway, because then people know when you say something, it happens. So no one's gonna be perfect, and you can't be perfect. But when you're always mindful of what you say, like when you say, hey, I'm going to send you the homework today, make sure it happens today. If you're not going to be able to do it today, don't promise it today, right? So that builds trust, and that trust is incredibly important. 100% focused when you're teaching, so not distracted. So especially when it's online, it's super easy to be like to have your phone go off, and then you check your phone, and then you think you're being discreet. A little bit harder in person, but especially online, super easy to be distracted, but it's very obvious when you're distracted. I see it in my students. I'll be like, I can tell you're looking at your phone, especially when they're kids or if they're teenagers and they're like sneaking their phone in. I'm like, I see you. I know you're sneakily texting. So it's same with us when we're not focused, when we're not 100% there. People know. Looking presentable. And then, so you don't have to look professional. It doesn't have to be suit and tie or dress or makeup done and everything, but you can't look like a complete slob. So look presentable. And then body language is important, both yours and theirs. So, are you completely slouched over in your chair, or are you sitting up straight? Is the student looking engaged, or are they not even looking at you when they're talking? Right? It's important to watch both your own body language and theirs. A lot of these points is really funny, like, and this is gonna be a theme as we do these videos and have these sessions and everything. It's so hard to hit everything. It's so difficult. Like even me, like it's funny when I was preparing this, I was like, man, there's so many things I'm missing lately. Like I need to tighten up on certain things too. Like I think it's a forever process. So verbal keys, excuse me, for building rapport. So asking questions is important. So get to know the students. So things like, how was your week? How was your weekend? What did you do? What plans do you have this week or this weekend, right? Remember what your students tell you and ask them about it in the future. So I'll be honest, like me, point number 2 does not come natural to me. People tell me things, and my personal natural go-to, if I'm not being conscious, is I'll forget what you told me until you, like, if you remind, like next time I see you, if you remind me, let me give an example. Let's say you told me I have a dog named Jack. Next week I see you, I might have completely forgotten that you have a dog and his name is Jack. But the second you're like, oh man, my dog was driving me crazy, then I'll remember. That'll be like a cue for me to remind me. And that's not the best, to be honest. Like it's something I'm always conscious of. I'm always like, okay, I need to like remember what people tell me. I actually take a lot of notes sometimes because I talk to so many different people that sometimes I just can't remember everybody. Just can't remember everything. And it's important to remember. It's important to remember what they tell you. That shows that you care, right? It shows. And so doing what you need to remember what people tell you, so you can ask about them, ask it to them later. It shows you care, right? Share things about you too, things about you as well. So students need to get to know you as well. It's not a one-way street. I find introverts struggle with this when I've worked with different people. Introverts definitely struggle more. And yeah, they have to get to know you as well. I remember, like, as a general rule of thumb, like they should know, like, as much as you know about them. It shouldn't be 50-50, because I understand some people are more personal about things and you'll have to pick what you share, what you don't share. But, an actual, if you think about a real friendship or real relationship, usually they go both ways. They, like, think about your best friend. You've seen them at their worst, and they've seen you at your worst, right? Your acquaintances, the types of things, the depth of things you've shared is probably the same level of depth that they've reciprocated, right? That they've reciprocated towards you. So it goes both ways in a student-teacher relationship, right? Like, you don't have to go share things that are super personal. In fact, that's probably not even appropriate unless you really are developing a very close friendship through the classes. If that's happening, that's great. But even just on a academic or a professional relationship, call it what you will, like, yeah, there should be a give and take. I think finding things in common and having common ground is incredibly important, and talking about them regularly really matters. I'll give some examples of those. In fact, why don't we jump ahead and I'll give some examples. So things you may have in common. So hobbies, kids, pets, cooking, sports, profession, future aspirations or goals, maybe a stage of life. Maybe you both just went through a divorce, right? Not something you can actually bond over. Life experiences. There's an infinite list of things, right? I can think of one of my students right now. They're from, and we talk about it reasonably frequently. They are from the same place that my mom's side of the family's born in. So it's really cool to talk about that. Just last week, we were talking about these crazy birds that we find in this country that are so tall. They're like the size of a child, like of an 8-year-old child. They're so freaking big and scary. And it's like, but they don't do anything. And we talked for like 4 minutes about this bird and what it's called. And so like, it might be something as silly as a type of bird, right? It could be some movie you watch. It could be something pretty deep. Who knows? It could be anything, right? But the more you have in common and the more you can find stuff in common, the better. Being kind and empathetic, caring about the students and being honest. Basically, I just wrote at the bottom here, values and moral compass. I wrote that at the bottom. Like being, all the cliche being a good human things that we learn when we're children and that we hear. All of those things really matter when you're trying to build rapport. Like if you're just a good human, and you're kind, warm, nice, empathetic, sympathetic, you are like all those good qualities that, friendly, positive, all those positive, good qualities, they're really important. You need to, the classroom, whether it be an actual physical classroom or a virtual classroom or whatnot, has to be a very warm and light place. Yeah, it has to be a warm and light place. At least that's my belief. Maybe it doesn't have to be, but that's my personal belief. And I want people to be happy coming to class. I want them to want to be there. I want them to like it. I want them to look forward to it. I care about that maybe 1% more than I do the actual learning, funnily enough. Maybe 1% more, maybe it's 50-50, but it's a really important thing. So maybe it's just a personality thing, and that'll be really interesting to talk about in the discussion part. We'll see what people think. So other verbal keys. So tone of voice, paying attention to their tone of voice. Tone of voice is everything. Not everything, but it's very important. You can tell a lot. Someone sounds bored or excited or neutral, or right. It's a very telling sign. And then another tactical thing this is a personal thing I've noticed. Pay attention to how many times a student says a similar, like one thing. You'd be shocked. People, if you ever actually actively listen to someone in a conversation, you'll notice there are certain things they repeat. They might repeat things about their family. They might repeat things about their dog. They might repeat things about hiking or about travel or there's certain themes they just repeat a lot. It comes up multiple times in your interactions with them. That's a clear indication of something they're interested in. And that's something that you can bond over, potentially. Maybe you don't relate to that, and maybe that's not going to be something you bond over, but maybe, right? Or you can at least ask them about it minimally, right? And then this bottom one here, balance how much your students speak versus how much you speak, especially private classes. Group classes, maybe it's relevant, but it's, let's say, especially relevant for private classes, especially. For introverts, you probably need to do a balance between, you probably need to make yourself talk a little more, potentially. For extroverts, we need to learn, I'm an extrovert myself, need to learn to talk a little less. Yeah. So that's, for me personally, in my classes, I'm always thinking to myself, remember to let them talk, remember to let them talk. I even make rules for myself sometimes. I'll be like, I'll look at the time, be like, I'm allowed to talk for 3 minutes. Then I have to stop, and I only allowed to ask questions for 5 minutes. Like I even make, then I can talk for 3 minutes. Then I have to ask questions for 5 or 10, and I only making them talk. So sometimes I even make rules for myself because I know myself and I'm aware that sometimes I can talk too much. So, and that's not, it's not ideal. So, as a reminder for people watching this live, if you have any questions you have during this and you like want to jot it down in the Google Doc, feel free to, and I'll make sure that just so you don't forget them. You're welcome to jot them into the Google Doc. So we looked at this point here. So some practical strategies. So for building rapport, these are just some very tactical types of things that I thought I would mention. And again, I cannot wait for a discussion portion. I think it'll be great to answer people's questions and hear other people's experiences and talk about this. But so for kids specifically, if you mistake their name or their age, it's always breaks the ice. It's a fantastic icebreaker because kids are often, especially when they're young, they get super nervous in classes. They're very nervous often, not all of them, but often they're nervous. They're a bit shy, and especially in my world when it's not at school and it's like an extracurricular. So they're coming like to a library or to our downtown office or whatever, and it's like, whoa, and they're hugging mom. And so a great thing will be like, oh, how old are you? And then they'll kind of be shy, and maybe mom prods them. They're like, I'm 7. What? You're 77? Oh my God, you're older than me. And they'll be like, no. And then that opens them up a little bit. Or even their grade can also be, I didn't write it on the slide here, their grade. They're like, let's do a role play. So I'm the kid. I'll be both, I guess, is only myself. I'll role play with myself. So I'm the teacher, and I'll be like, hey, how old are you? And the kid goes, I'm 6. 66? What the heck? No, 6. Oh, you're 6. Okay. Oh, wow. So you must be in grade 6 when, wow, how is grade 6 going? Grade 6 must be so hard. And they're like, no, I'm not in grade 6. I'm in grade 1. What? Grade 1? Don't 6-year-olds go to grade 6? Didn't you go to grade 1 when you're 1 years old? No. Oh man, things must have changed. That's so crazy. So that's a great way to break the ice with kids. Kids as well, I do tend to play games the first class. We will do some French, Spanish, whatever the language is. We will do some. We will make sure they're learning as well. It's not all fun and games, but it's definitely more oriented on play. Kids tend to talk a little less. Adults, you can actually do a lot of rapport building through talking, and you can just ask questions and you can kind of break the ice that way. Kids, it depends on the kid. Some of them that'll work, and some of them are kind of shy and they're kind of awkward with you at first. So often, especially when they're awkward, I don't even try, like I'll ask the grades, we'll do the grades, and we'll do the jokes I just talked about. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it hits and misses, bit of hit and miss. Usually it works, but and if it's really awkward and they're not really attaching to me, that's fine. You don't sweat it. You go, great. All right, well, let's jump in. We're going to play a game. And you play a game. So Hangman, Pictionary, maybe a board game, maybe whatever game it is, right? And you play a game. And they're going to start to open up as you play. And yeah, I often find for kids as well, showing, especially if they're really shy, sometimes you have to share a lot about yourself to get them to open up, or you have to show them things about you to get them to open up. Like you might be like, all right, we're going to start our class here. Oh, actually, let me demo it differently. You might say, okay, we're going to play a game. You're playing the game. And then maybe you like casually put your phone on the table, and then you're like, oh, and if they're super shy, you might be like, oh, I was actually just thinking of something. You're in grade 1, right? They're like, yeah. Oh, I was just thinking, I was talking to another grade 1 student. He was telling me about this thing called, is it Roblox? I was looking, let me Google it. Yeah, this is Roblox. Do you play this? They go, oh yeah, I play Roblox. Yeah, I play. So you might have to kind of just like, just start talking about different things that catches their interest. So, and then you can find some hooks. You can find some things that that they're interested in that you can actually build on. For adults and kids as well, Conversation Jenga is a great icebreaker. So Conversation Jenga is very straightforward. It's a standard game of Jenga, but you number off each piece. Each piece has a different question on that piece, a get to know you question, an icebreaker question. So you take out a piece of Jenga, they look at the number, they look at the corresponding question with that number. You then ask the question. Everybody that's playing then answers that question. You can play that in different languages as well. That's a great icebreaker. You might have to have simplified questions for beginner levels, or maybe more complex questions for advanced people, things of that nature. So that's always great. Google and YouTube everything. So anytime I don't know how to do something, I always Google it. Google and YouTube has all the answers. So like literally, even when teachers out, like my teachers will ask me questions like, hey, how do you teach blah, blah, blah? And it's if it's a new thing I've never taught before, pretty straightforward. I'll just Google it. I'll be like, oh, it looks like Google says this. So it looks like YouTube says this. And then I'll try it. And yeah, it's like Google and YouTube everything. So if you're like, man, if you're struggling with building rapport with a student, or they're like, man, my student just won't talk, Google it. Someone's made a video about it. Someone's made a blog post about it. And they're going to give you useful strategies that are going to help you cover it. This is agreeing upon learning goals is a big one too. This is going to be something we get more into in another video. But if you've agreed upon, if you're both on the same page as to what you're working towards and what goals you're working towards, that's a great way to get on the same page and to, yeah, be on the same page. It's like literally right before this call here, I had a call with a couple teachers, and I wrote for one of them at the top of this note file, like some different focus points for a student. And I was like, hey, I think this is going to work out well based on everything I know about the student. I think this is the plan that you should follow with the student. Why don't you go through this plan, ask her about it, make sure she's cool with it, and then you'll move forward. Once you have that agreement and you're on the same page, you know, that creates, you're on the same team now, right? And when you're a teammate, you have a good relationship. Teammates tend to have a good relationship. Think of sports, right? So then others, I'm sure we'll get into others as we go into discussion and Q&A. So that's this portion. That's the portion here for the presentation. Let me kind of cut this recording. For people that are watching the recording and you ever want to join live, maybe I'll put a link below in the description. I'll put something on the screen so you know how to join it live if you'd ever like to. You can see the schedule and all of that. As of right now, we're doing these on, excuse me, on Tuesday nights. So Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for an hour. And so let me just stop the screen share and everything here. Stop the recording too. So yeah, people watching recorded, thanks for watching. I appreciate that. And we'll see you next time. People live, stick around and we'll get into our discussion.